Hi. Hi, Katie.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. Hi, everyone. We are live. This is our final Turning Point live, maybe not our last live. I know for sure it's not going to be our last live, but it's our last one on the series called Turning Point, which we have been doing over the last little while. My name is Loreli. I'm the Young Parents Director, and I am here with Katie, who has been with me on this series. She is a ministry worker and mentor. And together we're talking about turning points. And I just am going to define it. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Turning point. What is a turning point is the first question. And by the way, as you're tuning in and as you're listening into this, as I'm asking questions, I would invite you to give your responses. We're going to try and track those in the comments and we'll go from there. So, a turning point. This is an important change in a person's life that is usually a decisive change, and usually, not always, but results in a beneficial result. So I've actually been thinking about this, Katie, in terms of a story. If you're reading a story or a narrative, it's the point of almost the highest tension in a story, otherwise maybe known as a climax, and then you see a pivot and the character moves on to their future or whatever. The rest of the story continues with that major change in a person's life. That's what makes a story. And so we're kind of talking about this in terms of the story of our lives and in the story of you as a young parent. So today we are talking about the turning point. And so when I say from rejection to acceptance, rejection can be that highest tension point. And I am throwing this question at you, Katie. We didn't talk about this. I did this last time. How I know always. You're so willing, Katie. But how might you define rejection? Or how might we define rejection?
Oh, that is a good question. You think like we think it's so we know what rejection is. I think from my experience, rejection tends to be something where, from my perspective, I want something. Usually I've had to put myself into some position to say, this is what I want, whether it be a relationship or a job or something. And there's some vulnerability there. And then there is, I'm going to try not to use the word in the definition. There is a denial of that, or like it's so hard not to say rejection. There's the other party, somebody on the other side has not chosen you, or whether it be, that's a really ineloquent
That's right.
definition. But I think what it comes down to for me is there's some vulnerability on my part. Well, so I think we have a lag. Hopefully we're okay. Are we good? Okay. There's some vulnerability.
I think so.
Yeah, we are. I feel like I keep interrupting you. Okay, hopefully we're good. There's vulnerability on my part in terms of putting myself out there in some way. And then the other party, whether it be an individual or a group or whatever it is, doesn't take that, doesn't accept it, makes a different decision. And sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's not. But that's what I think rejection is.
Okay. Are we still experiencing a lag here? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Okay. There might be just a lag between us. So if it continues, maybe we'll have to figure something out. But what I think is really important about what you said is that there's some kind of bid or application, a question even about acceptance. And then there's been a no to that.
Yeah.
So there's a literal no to you. So what's an example of that? We talked about a job application, but is there something more? Yeah.
I mean, I can think of an example from when I was 16, which was a very long time ago. And there was a boy that I liked, and we spent a lot of time together and talked on the phone every day after school. And I thought it was going a certain direction. And then as a friend, he confided in me that he was really into my best friend. And I was like, oh, this is totally not the way that I thought this was going. And it's not that I had, made a particular request, like gave him a little sheet of paper that said, will you be my boyfriend? Check yes or no. But there still was some sense of rejection, and that I had assumptions and felt like I was kind of, putting myself out there a bit. And then I felt rejected by that. So that was, a teenage example for me, but I still remember it. So it had some impact.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I think there's touch points of rejection along our lives. And I can think of some from even when I was small and wanting friendship or affection
Yeah.
or something like that. And I was either pushed away or ignored. And so that leaves us with a feeling, and it can be different feelings for different people. But do you know that rejection is considered to be one of the most painful experiences, the most emotionally painful experiences? We could even feel that in our bodies. And maybe
Yeah.
sometimes when you think of moments of rejection, you can even sense where it is in your body that you feel it. But what comes to mind as a feeling for you with rejection?
Well, I'm not great with my feelings, but I will say that that resonates and sounds like it would be true, that it can be one of the most painful, because there's something that we internalize from that no, that there is something wrong with me. And so I think there is a feeling of being unworthy, being inadequate. There's a sadness to it, maybe an anger, depending on the situation and your personality as well. But I think that definitely rings true, that it would have the potential to be one of the most painful things, because it's me. I was rejected. Who I am, or what I have to offer was not good enough, or so that rings true, that it would be painful, and how we feel that pain might come out differently. But anxiety, even, like, it can bring about anxiety or worry about future. So yeah.
Yes. Totally. You can feel so much pain you don't want to feel again. And that
Yeah.
can translate into a fear of rejection, meaning you avoid making those bids of connection, or you avoid making the job application, or you might be even wondering why it's so hard for you to do something that takes a step
Yeah.
in the direction of putting yourself in a place, because there's a vulnerability to that ask to be loved, to be accepted, to be hired, to be recruited. And so that means that fear keeps people back from doing things they want to do, or even seeing if they would be accepted. It's
Yes.
too
Yeah.
painful, the rejections, to even attempt that bid for acceptance. So,
Yeah.
what kinds of things do we tell ourselves, or how do we respond to rejection? We mentioned one, which is fear. Um, but I'm just wondering about that narrative we're addressing in the story, and where we are in our story if we're facing rejection. What are some things that you might tell yourself when you faced rejection?
Yeah, I think it probably depends a little bit on people's personalities, but I think you can
Okay.
go from on an sort of, I don't want to say unhealthy, because it probably is, for a lot of us, our natural thing is to have the negative self-talk about why I am not good enough and the things that I have done wrong. On that same side, it can go, what's wrong with the other person? Like, we can start saying, well, like, it's just because he's a jerk, or it's just, because, we can start downplay, or not downplaying, but putting down the other side, like they just don't understand, or they obviously have no idea what they're talking about. And neither of those are necessarily true. We're just kind of trying to work through why the rejection happened. So I think that's one way that we can start to react. I think if we're able to, and sometimes time is part of it, but we can look back and examine the rejection a little bit more logically, or even without all the emotions attached to it. And say, oh, maybe the timing was wrong, or actually I'm a better fit for this other person or this other role or this other home, whatever it may be. And sometimes that can take time. So that's not always the immediate response to rejection. And sometimes that's never. Sometimes there are certain things that remain wounds for us until maybe we have somebody nudge us into some sort of healthy processing of it. But so I think it can be different, but I definitely think it can be, depending on what the situation is, our reaction to it can be extreme, like self-protecting, or self-deprecating also.
Yeah,
And we can get caught in those narratives.
It's so true. And I heard that this is very much paraphrased, but I heard a definition even of our emotions and what they are, and how a response to rejection, an emotional response to rejection, is really, so any feeling that we have is a chemical response to a situation that will either point us towards truth or away from truth. So it's really important what we tell ourselves in those moments, because we're feeding either a false or a true narrative. And so I think the false narrative is that we're worthless. The false narrative that it's not worth pursuing connection. And the false narrative is going to lead us away from what God wants for our flourishing. So we actually turn to scripture for truth and align it with our narrative and see where are we aligned with the truth. So here's a verse for you from 1 Peter, which is in the New Testament of the Bible. And says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So who's him? And what does this mean? Because this sounds like a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. So Katie, what's your take on this?
Well, him is God. So cast your cares on him, or all your anxiety on him. And I think this can be applied to different situations. Our anxiety doesn't all stem from rejection, and not all of our rejection leads to anxiety. But there is this message here, because he cares for you, is this underlying message of knowing who God is as our creator, one who loves us unconditionally, who wants to see us grow and flourish, and that his acceptance is the underlying thing in this message, that our worries and our anxieties and our pains from rejection can be given over to him. And just the knowledge of whatever that situation is that we experience rejection is, that he has cared for us and accepted us within that. Despite that, all of the things, God's acceptance has been there for us throughout that whole process. And I think too that that in this, I just had a totally blank moment for a second there.
Well, let me allow that. Yes, I'll say something. I'll fill in that blank. Because as you were talking, it occurs to me, when we have an assurance of God's love and acceptance for us, we can face the rejections of everyday life, because no one has gone through life without a rejection, but we won't be so swayed by it because we have this grounding and foundation of God's love for us. So that's what occurs to me when you're saying this. This beautiful invitation.
Yeah. And I think where I just blanked out there was thinking, like, God has a much bigger picture than we do. So he is absolutely present with us in our present, in our pain that's happening right now. If you are rejected from something right now, he is here and he accepts you. But he also knows what's coming beyond that rejection, and knows that perhaps that relationship, he has a different plan, and it might take our timing is not his, we don't know, but there's something else that he has planned. And so that's where there's like this sitting in whatever we're feeling right now, but to know that the one who accepts us also has the bigger picture. So there's like, that's kind of a way to help rid our anxiety comes from the unknown, right? Like we have anxiety because we don't know the outcome of situations, and we don't know where it's going. And but he does. And so that's why we can cast our anxieties on him and know that in our moments of rejection that he accepts us because he has the full picture and the full plan. And so it lifts a burden off of our shoulders of knowing. And then when we really know that, and sometimes that can take a long time for that to sink from our heads to our hearts, and it can disappear and we have to do it all over again. And it's a constant letting that penetrate into us. But in those moments of rejection, then we can break out of that narrative that we were talking about before, where it's either self-deprecating or talking badly about the other person, because in that particular moment, this person rejected me, but God accepts me and he knows me and he loves me in this. So I don't have to carry the pain of that rejection going forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So in the end, you are there, knowing that when your boyfriend
or want to be my Disney
want to be boyfriend liked your friend, it felt rejection at the time, but in the end, you can look back with the confidence that God knew your pathway. God knew where everything would lead, and he had you in his hands the whole times. And the more you go through life, the more you discover that when you're in his care, and the more easily you can cast your anxiety on him because you've seen his faithfulness. So it's something to look back on. Hindsight, it's something difficult to be in the middle of it. So our hearts do go out to those feeling rejection right now. There might be a relationship, a school test, an application where no was said to you. And I just want to give an invitation to you for this invitation right here, to pray up to the Lord about that, to cast your cares, give your cares to him, cast your anxiety on him. And the other thing is, if you need to talk through that, if you're looking for someone to be a sounding board, a non-judgmental space, we are here for you. We have our groups, but we also offer one-to-one mentoring. And Katie and I are available for that. Or if you're already connected to a group, there is a group leader there for you. So I just wanted to extend that to you. We'd love to share about how to see those signs on your turning point of life, those high tension in the middle of it place, that there's an opportunity to move in a new direction. So we'd love to do that. So please reach out if you want for those conversations, and we hope to talk to you again soon. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.